Hello, everybody. Hi. I'm super excited to be here today. It's my second time at the Transition Conference. And my husband would say I'm addicted to this thing. So I have skin in the game. I use my smartphone all the time. And I was just thinking about it. Right now, it's just about the 50th anniversary of the moon landing. And I was apparently 3 years old and watched it on TV, though I can't say I remember. But the technology, the computing power that took our astronauts to the moon in 1969 is less than what you have in the palm of your hand in a smartphone or an iPad or an iPad Pro. A lot of different technology, or Samsung, Android operating system. We have these incredible tools that we can use, yes, to talk on the phone, but we can use them for so much more. And so this topic is near and dear to my heart because I think it's such a tool that can be used to support people in the transition to adulthood, or in any time. I mean, we all go through different transitions throughout our lifespans. And so I really wanted to address this and talk about it today. And at the end, I'm going to tell you about a new program that we have at Tech Owl, PA. So I am the AAC Services Coordinator at Tech Owl. Tech Owl, some of y'all might know the acronym PIAT. We've rebranded less than a year ago, and Tech Owl stands for Technology for Our Whole Lives. I work primarily with augmentative and alternative communication, which includes using these things for communication. I am the parent of a young man with autism. He's 24. He's been working with OVR. He's working on his getting his first major employment, and he's the reason I got into the field of speech and language pathology. He was diagnosed when he was almost 5. After probably a good couple of years of my pediatricians poo-pooing my over-concerned motherly concerns. So I would say he's not jumping with 2 feet off the ground yet. I see the other kids doing that. Oh, well, I could send you to PT, but you could work on that at home. It'll be fine. He's talking, but he's not talking quite like the other kids. Well, we could send you to speech therapy, but is he talking? He's talking, so you're fine. So they kind of said, not a lot to help me until he was closer to 5, when a lot of the social impairments that were part of his autism became more apparent. And that's when I started and went back to school for speech. Now my email is here. My handouts are posted on the website for the conference. My slide deck has changed because I always fiddle and twiddle and think of more things to add. Feel free to contact me if you want an updated copy of my slide deck. You can either take a picture of my email or grab a business card or one of our pieces of literature off the table up here. So feel free to be in contact with me. And also, I talk pretty fast, so feel free to ask me questions if you want. And we're going to mic all the questions. As the facilitator said, we're being recorded, so we're going to make sure that the recording can hear all of us. The picture here, this picture is from Pittsburgh, where I was just a few weeks ago, and there's a picture of a lake near my house. It's kind of the heart of my peace when I'm home. So, now, when we think phones, we think telecommunication. And telecommunication access, so important. I love this photo that I found somewhere on Google, because look how big wireless or mobile phones used to be, right? So huge. What does telecommunication do for us? Keeps us in contact with people at a distance. It could be somebody across the room we're sending a text or an emoji to. It could be somebody across the world. And it's not just speaking. We're going to talk about other stuff today too, but it can be sending a text. It can be posting to social media. It can be sending an email. All of those are forms of distance communication, and they should all really be seen as equally valuable. Now, if I had to ask, how many of you have sent a text message today? Okay, the majority. How many of you have used an emoji? How many of you sent an email? How many of you have talked on the phone? Hands go up, but not quite as many, right? We communicate, but it's not always talking on the phone these days. And there are people who think, oh, that's so terrible. People used to talk to each other, and it's such a shame that everything is so distant and text-based now. But I'm going to argue the opposite side of that coin, which for a lot of us and for a lot of people with disabilities, that's a really good access to communication with people at a distance. So it's really important. And it can help create independence. It can build self-confidence. It can support engagement in the larger community. And it can really support self-advocacy. How many of you are on Twitter? Okay, a few people. I'm on Twitter, probably more than I should be. But a lot of what I'm on Twitter for is I follow self-advocates on Twitter. I follow people with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I follow people with CP. I follow people with autism. And most of those people would call themselves proudly autistic. And they talk about what they do, what their challenges are, what they see as ableism in society. And if you're talking about something, you can always at an organization. You can let SEPTA know when they've done a bad job with having accessible transportation in Philly. You can talk to the government. That's a really self-advocacy. I'm not so far off the mark. Really, our telecommunication devices can be used for that kind of a role. And I think I had a phone like that back in about 1995. Now, telecommunication used to only be really about landline phones. And here's a question I always have to ask. How many of you still have a landline phone? Okay, and I'm going to thank those of you who do. I do as well. Because you know when you get that long phone bill, which is about 10 pages of jargon and gobbledygook, and at the very end of that long telephone bill, it says something about this 10-cent fee for this, and that 10-cent tax for this, and this 10-cent surcharge, and 13 cents here and 12 cents there. Some of that money from your landline phones goes to fund phones for people with disabilities. So thank you. And what I mainly use my landline phone for is to capture the telemarketers and the robocalls from politicians and my mom. My mom calls me on the landline phone. I think she's the only real person who actually calls me on that phone. And I love this cartoon. What's that? It's an old phone. It's like my kids once when they were little, and I actually used a film camera to take a picture, and my 4-year-old ran up to me, Mom, can I see the picture? I said, no, you can't. Why not? It's gonna have to be developed. And he's like, ooh. I'm old enough to have had a rotary dial phone as a child. And when I was a teenager, I talked on the phone, I'll admit it, so much that my parents actually got me a separate landline so they could actually be reached by other people. But now we're not just all about the landline phones, because who can afford to sit at home waiting for a landline phone to ring? We don't. We're out, we're about, we're in school, we're working, we're out in the community. So we have cell phones that are wireless, but also think about iPads and tablets. Because communication doesn't always have to be just over this. You can have cellular plans for your iPad, and you may not be able to talk on your iPad as if it were a phone, but if you have an iPad, there are a lot of apps that you can use for telecommunication that are just as amazing. So what can we do with smartphones? I wanted to share resources with you and make those resources live in a place that wasn't just going to go away, once you lose the PowerPoint or once you've left the conference. So I created a bit.ly, a link there to a Google Sheet that's going to live on the internet. I've put a lot of the apps that I wanted to talk about today into that link. And Anybody, feel free to edit. I think I've left the permissions open for anybody to edit. So as we talk today, tell me about the apps that you really like. Tell me about the things that you do with your telecommunication that you find valuable or important. And we can add to that list. And I'm happy to extend it, and then you can check the list later. So if you don't have a handout or don't plan to download a handout, take a photo of the URL. And that way you can take a look at the resources later on. So the world of apps. I remember when the iPhone came out, what was it, 2007? And they started talking about apps, and I'm thinking, what are these things they call apps? I didn't actually get an iPhone until probably around 2011 or 12. But the App Store is insane, and it's not just iPhones, it's also the world of Android phones, or are there still actually Microsoft phones out there? But we have apps for almost every purpose in the known universe, right? So there are apps for education. So one that I listed is iStudies Pro, which is an organizational app that can be aimed at somebody who's going on from high school to tech school, or to community college, or to a four-year institution. And that app can help them organize their work, set their deadlines, see when their deadlines are, and then probably also give themselves reminders about when they have to hand something in or something is due. There are lots of task list apps. So Wunderlist is one of them. Todoist is another. These apps can help you to set reminders for yourself, or even, there's one, I think it's called something like Where's the Milk, or Go Get Milk, or something like that. And you can set that for your grocery lists. You could have subdivided lists of different things to get in different places. There are apps for text to speech. So Voice Dream Reader can go on a phone, and that app, imagine if you're a young college student, but yet reading is not your best manner for receiving and learning new information. But what do professors like to do? They'll hand out a PowerPoint, or they'll give out a PDF of something. You can import a PDF document into Voice Dream Reader and have it read out loud, and set the speed at which that text is read out loud. You can import a bunch of different types of documents into that app. And so that app can support your comprehension for continued education. There's another meaning for the phrase text to speech. Text to speech can also be a communication app on the iPhone. There's one that's free for the iPhone. It's not very sophisticated. I think it's called Talk For Me. And you can create files of different text to speech, and you can then have the, go into Starbucks, or go into, I guess it's Sheets out here, right? Not Wawa. And you can, have your phrases set for, please give me a latte with 10 sugars, whatever. You can do that through text to speech. Apps for social interaction. We all like to rag on Facebook and rag on Twitter, and, oh, these things are getting too big. Should we break them down and treat them as public utilities? How should we deal with misinformation or fake news? I'm not going to say any of that is not true, but for people with disabilities, you can create a community on social media. And yeah, you can set your privacy settings. So on Facebook, just one example, we have a group that meets every 2 years. It's kind of a summer institution or camp for people who use augmentative and alternative communication. It's called ACES. It takes place at Temple University. You get to be on campus, live in the college dorms, go to AAC class, learn computer access, hear from other people who use AAC, who advocate for themselves for things like how to direct my own care. And ACES has a Facebook group, and we set our privacy restrictions, so it's only open to the people who were involved in that program. But parents and students who are part of ACES can share information, share challenges, fundraise, and just basically shoot the breeze. And there is nothing like being able to share your problems and your frustrations and your triumphs with a group of people who understand you and understand what you as a family are going through. So there's a lot to be said for having that kind of ability to network with people through social media. Apps for accessibility. One example is called Seeing AI. Has anybody got this app already? Okay, one person. You're my facilitator. Can I use you as a guinea pig?
Sure.
Come on over. He's gonna love this. So Seeing AI was designed by Microsoft.
Short text.
Whoop, don't read yet. And it's meant to take the visual world and make it auditory. And it can do things like read a product SKU code. It can read short text. It can also look at a room. So let's start by looking at the room.
Scene preview. Processing. Romina Liuzzi sitting in front of a crowd.
Is there somebody here named Romina Liuzzi? It seems to have read a name somewhere. I don't know. But anyway, hope she's not upset. But it can also look at a person. So if I'm vision impairment, if I have vision impairment and I don't know exactly the kind of person I'm talking to, I can point it at
One
you.
face near top head, one face near center, 5 feet, 2 faces. One processing. 51-year-old man with gray hair and a beard looking neutral.
Now I'm offended.
Sorry.
6 years.
Hey, it called me 65, so I figure I can do it to other people, right? So that app is a free app. It's on the Apple platform. I know they've planned to roll it out to other platforms. I haven't seen it on other platforms yet. Let me know if you know better than I. But while it's a fun parlor trick, right? Nothing like getting people laughing during a presentation. But it's also can read colors. It can also read your money or your currency. So if you have vision impairment and you want to make sure you're not wearing a purple top with lime green pants in the morning, you can use it for things like that. I have friends who use that app quite a bit. If you have a smartphone, if you have an iPhone, that is free. You don't have to buy a separate device. You don't have to pay a device manufacturer for something. It's just there for you to use and also to make your friends laugh once in a while, right? So there's so many different things that we can do with our smartphones. And one of the other things that we can do is support navigation. And getting serious again, think about that, the applications of GPS and navigation apps for people with disabilities and their independence. Let's say a young person with an intellectual disability would really like to just be able to go to the pizza place and order their own slice and not to have mom or somebody else hanging over their shoulder the whole time. You can get walking directions. Google Maps has added indoor navigation for airports and larger malls. Along with that, also, I just found out today about something called My Maps. So if you Google Maps and My Maps, you're going to come up with web-based access to creating your own maps and walking routes. So you could set up a map that would allow the individual that you're supporting to independently know the route to walk from their house to get to a store, walk from their house, get to the library. So that's something I'm interested in exploring and figuring out whether that's also already app-based or whether it's going to become app-based in the near future. Another app that I found out about is Wheelmate. So Wheelmate will GPS locate you and then let you know where the accessible bathrooms and other accessible parking is located. And that, for somebody who has mobility needs and is using powered mobility or a wheelchair, that's huge. Just knowing where you can go to the bathroom. You need to have that information before you leave the house. Otherwise, you could be totally stuck. And so that's a health and safety issue even. But we have an app now that's beginning to add that kind of information in. And I always think back to a friend of mine that I used to teach with in another school in Bucks County who used a manual chair and a ramp van. So knowing where she could get parking was absolutely vital. And that gets me back to like one of my favorite soapboxes, which is when you see accessible parking, don't park on the lines next to the parking space, because if you do that, the person in their van is not going to be able to open up their ramp and get out of their ramp van. So with an app like this, at least then you know, oh, if I'm going to go off to a new restaurant or a new place, at least I know a little bit about the facilities that are around me and the supports that I can have. Apple Maps, also for navigation. I kind of go back and forth between a few GPS maps. I'm usually driving, and sometimes I'll use Waze, and sometimes I'll use Google, and sometimes I'll use Apple Maps. Apple Maps puts your navigation on your Apple Watch. And it even uses tactile and auditory cues to help you with your navigation. So if I'm driving someplace new and I'm using Apple Maps, every time I'm reaching a corner where I have to turn, if I have to turn right, I think it is, this buzzes on my wrist and it goes doot, 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 doot. If I have to make a left-hand turn, it buzzes on my wrist and goes doot, 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 doot. So it gives you all these cues that can support your navigation. And more apps are also creating apps for the watch. And I could probably do a whole hour of talking just about the Apple Watch, because there's so many things that are getting built into this watch that can support people with complex needs. Yeah?
I have an Apple Watch.
You do? What do you use your watch for?
I just started.
Whoop. Okay. Let me bring this around so that we can make sure everybody can hear.
I'm starting to use my Apple Watch, but I might,
Whoops. There you go.
I'm just starting to use my Apple Watch, but I might be using it for running and stuff.
Right, but we're just starting to play around with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the overall question was, what do you use your Apple Watch for? And I do the same thing. I will use my watch to monitor my running, to monitor how many times I've stood up, making sure I'm getting out of my office chair and walking around the office every day. I use it for a lot of reasons to support my health. And the new Apple Watch, the Series 4 Apple Watch, can even take a 1-point EKG. So if somebody has heart health needs, that could be really important support. Even this watch, mine is a Series 2, it's an older watch, but if I were to have tachycardia and my heart rate were to go way too high, it would warn me. And I could get to the doctor. And I have heard anecdotally reports about people whose lives have potentially been saved because they had warnings from their watch and got to the doctor in time before they had a heart attack or when they were having a stroke. So that's huge. That's a great source of independence for somebody with medical needs. Yes. Oh, what? Actually, let's do this right.
I have a loud voice.
But we're recording.
No voice is going to carry on recording.
No, I was just saying, when I was watching the World Cup, the girls' game, I have my watch only for a couple months. All of a sudden, I got one of those. Your heart rate's at 120, and I'm like, oh my goodness! It was when they scored the first goal, so it was like, yes, you know. And we do need equal pay, so I'm going to speak while I'm here.
100%. Yeah, I use my Apple Watch to monitor my heart rate when I'm exercising at rest, because my heart rate, my resting heart rate tends to be kind of on the, like, we're not concerned, but it's a little bit low size. So I'm like, oh, it's only 52 today? Okay. So I have that data, and I'm sure through the health app on my phone, I could then take that data and share it with my medical professional if I needed to. So it's pretty cool. But I also do things on here like there are augmentative communication apps that will push out a folder to the watch. So I can say, can I have a latte, please? Or where's the bathroom? Or, a simple message like that. You're not going to get hugely robust communication just on the watch face because it's such a small space, but you can supplement your social communication by using your Apple Watch. And reminders, and boy do I use these a lot. Siri is huge for me, and part of why it's huge for me is because when I leave my office door and I drive home, I might as well be driving to Disneyland or someplace like that because I'm in a different world and I'm not thinking of the things that I still need to do for work once I get home. And the iPhone has what are known as geofenced reminders using Siri. So I can use this, put it near my microphone. Hey Siri, when I get home, remind me to hug my dog.
Okay, I'll remind you about hugging my dog when you arrive at home.
I use an Irish Siri, so that's why she sounds funny. But that reminder will not pop up until I pull into my driveway. And that can also, it's not just for your home or your work, but it can also be, hey, S, when I get to ShopRite, remind me to buy a dozen eggs. And it's going to pop up that reminder. So that, getting back, because it's not all about me, let's get back to supporting young people with transition needs and disabilities. What if organization is one of those needs and you have to remember, when I get home, email that copy of my resume to my job coach. When I get to school, don't forget to hand in that paper I wrote last night to teacher Jones. And you can set those reminders, and you can also set to some degree how intrusive those reminders are so that the phone alerts you and you remember. And for somebody who's a little disorganized like myself, that's a really big help. It's definitely a big help. And I wish I could get my son to use it. My son is 24, and of course, mom being an assistive technology person, I'm like, hey, Matt, you could do this, or you could do that. Why don't you try this app? And I'm still mom, so he doesn't always listen to what I have to say. Other reminder apps that are out there, the one on the left is Wunderlist. And you have Ada reminders, or Todoist. There's also a pill reminder by the same app creator as Ada reminders, and that can be for medication reminders. That's a huge part of being independent, remembering when to take your medication and making sure you don't miss a dose. One cool thing about Ada reminders is that you can put a voice memo into that reminder or alarm. And it can be a one-off reminder, or it could be a remind me every hour, or an alarm to wake me up in the morning. So my poor son Matt, hopefully he never watches this videotape. But when he first went off to college, as mom, I was a little panicky about how he was going to get up and get to classes on time. And we loaded Ada reminders onto his phone. And I sort of secretly went in there and set an alarm for 7:30 every morning. Only Monday through Friday, I wasn't that mean. And instead of just having a regular ding-dong sound go off, I put in a voice memo. So he goes off to college and his phone goes off. Hey, Matt, it's mom. Get up. It's time to go to class. Don't forget to go to class. You're at school now. You can imagine how quickly that app got deleted off my son's iPhone. But it could be really, really helpful. So reminders are really big. I tend to use what's built into either my phone or what's built into my Google Calendars. But that's the great thing, is that there are so many different choices. And as we know, each individual with a disability is first and foremost an individual. So what works for one person might not work for another person, but but you've got a lot of choices out there that you can customize and make work for you. Okay, another thing you can do with your iPhones now is if you have the AirPods. I always call them earpods, and people are like, no, that's not it. I don't have them yet. But if you have hearing impairment, you can actually connect your phone to your AirPods and use your phone as a directional mic. So if you're at dinner and it's crowded and it's noisy, and like me, you're now having trouble hearing what somebody across the table is saying, you could set the phone next to that person, set the accessibility features so that it goes into your AirPods. And you can also, that is sophisticated enough to filter out some of the background noise. You can also hook your phone up with many hearing aids that are out there. Yes?
So hooking up the speakers.
Oop, sorry. We have to bring the mic.
We actually just went to our audiology appointment for my son with his hearing aids, and she said within the next year or two, they're actually going to be hooking up the hearing aids with Bluetooth to your phones, to the cell phones and whatnot. So your speakers, your music, everything will be just filtered directly through the hearing aids.
Mm-hmm. Which is amazing that we can do that. What if you're totally deaf? What if you can't hear anything and you're not going to benefit from your aids or from the directional mic? There's an app for the iPhone. I don't think I put it into the presentation, but it's called Ava. And it does cost a little bit to subscribe to it if you use a certain number of minutes a month or more. But what Ava does is it can caption up to 5 or 6 conversational streams. So let's say you're at Thanksgiving dinner and you're deaf, but everybody else is hearing and they're all having a conversation. How would that feel every year? I wouldn't want to go to Thanksgiving if I couldn't be part of the conversation. But you can use Ava, A-V-A, to actually put it on everybody's smartphones. They can all subscribe to your channel, and then you'll get like 5 lines of captioned audio. And it's pretty accurate. It's not bad at all. So I've used it when I've had somebody come to my office who is deaf or hearing impaired and want to make sure that they're understanding what I'm saying when we're doing a demonstration or giving out information. Okay, we have a question. See, I'm getting the hang of this.
I just want to say, on that topic, Google just released an experimental app that they're rolling out on Android called Live Transcribe. It's exactly the same as that, and it's free. And you could be sitting there having a conversation with someone, and it transcribes everything that is said right there on the screen, black and white. I've tried it. It is extremely accurate, almost scarily accurate. But it's really cool.
Fabulous. And because I'm in the Apple world,
Yeah.
I don't have that one yet.
Yeah, Live Transcribe is what it's called.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind going to the Google Sheet and adding that one in, that would be awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I hope that will come soon. I mean, Google tends to make all of their apps cross-platform so that they can work on almost any operating system. And that's terrific, especially if you're Android and you're chatting with your mom who has an iPhone and somebody else who's on a different platform. It's good to have it really be cross all of those platforms. Something else you can do with your iPhone is if you have trouble speaking in certain circumstances, you can actually just take your iPhone accessibility features, and as long as you have the fine motor skills to create a message and to do a 2-fingered swipe, you can turn this into instant text-to-speech. Don't need a separate app. So what you do is you go into accessibility features. So you go to settings, to general, to accessibility, and it's under the vision set of accessibility features. You go to speech, and you have it speak screen or speak selection. And so then I can write a note, and let me see where my note is. And if I swipe correctly,
I can use 2 fingers to swipe from the top of the screen to speak my text aloud. Turn on speak selection in accessibility settings.
so there, I can talk to somebody even when I don't have access to my voice. And you might think, oh, that's kind of funny. Why would I be able to talk sometimes but not be able to talk other times? Well, it's actually quite a big issue, especially for adults with autism. How many of you are familiar with the spoon theory of disability and chronic illness? Okay, I think I put a link. Yeah, I did put a link in there. So for some adults with autism, they might really be able to use their voice and speak for themselves when they're with familiar people, among people they feel comfortable with, but if they're stressed, uses up another spoon. If they're in an unfamiliar place, uses up another spoon. They run out of spoons, and so they might go to a coffee shop or a restaurant and not feel like they can talk. And genuinely, in those contexts, they can't talk. And so they might use text-to-speech in that case. So how neat is it that you have settings just built into your phone that you can use for text-to-speech? So if you're, and seriously, it's all of us. Is there anybody here who has never thought to themselves, I really don't want to talk on the phone right now, I'm just gonna send that person an email or send them a text? One person. And so we all use alternative forms of communication as we need to, as it benefits us throughout the day. So we've got to stop seeing, this is my other soapbox, stop seeing AAC, augmentative communication, as this separate thing that those people with those disabilities do. We all do it. We all use it, we all benefit from it. All of us who have used emojis have used symbol-based communication, for instance. So. Note-taking. Our phones can be used for dictation. On the Apple iPhone, you can use your Notes app and the microphone, and it's gotten better over time. You might need to go back in and edit some of the text, but if you're in the car and you come up with the brilliant idea for the next thing that's going to change the world, you can dictate. Hey Siri, open the Notes app. You can dictate right through Siri. Yes, I wasn't talking to you. Okay. Does it all the time.
Right on cue, huh?
Yeah. Also, Google AI would say in general that the Android world, it has done a better job of understanding human speech and doing dictation than the Apple Siri iPhone world has so far. I expect things to change and just improve over time. But Google AI seems to do better with people who might have poor intelligibility. So a few years ago at Temple, we had this thing called the wireless pilot. We were looking at adding cell phones and wireless communication to our free special phone program. And one of the people who came in was somebody, a young man I know who has cerebral palsy. He's in his late 30s, and he needed to have a specialized phone that could Bluetooth into his joystick on his wheelchair for him to be able to use it. Well, we also quickly realized that the best thing for him too was just having access to, what is it, Hey Google? Okay Google, whatever you say in the Google world. He could use that to make his own phone calls. And he said to me, he said, I'm 38 years old. For the first time in my life, I've been able to make a private phone call without somebody helping me. That is huge. That's beyond huge to me. Apps for note-taking. A lot of these are fairly well known, but you've got Notability, Evernote, Google Keep. Dragon is more for dictation. Microsoft OneNote. If you're going into higher education, Sonocent. It's a great app that pairs also with software, and the software probably, I'm not even going to say how much. I think the last I heard it was somewhere around the ballpark of $200, but you have that on your laptop, you have the app on your phone, and what you can do is you can record your lectures, and then you can go back through and you can annotate those recordings, color code the sections of the lecture, make sure that anything that the professor is saying that's totally off topic, you can cut and leave out. You can add PowerPoints, you can add visuals, slides. Great tool that if you don't have your laptop with you, you can do on your phone. So that's great for continuing in education. What about video calls? Who might make a video call? Okay, we've got a lot of hands raised. I'm going to send you running, right? So I'll name a few people. Somebody who might make a video call, for instance, would be somebody with an intellectual disability who might want to talk to their family or talk to a teacher. People who are deaf and communicate by ASL use video calls technology all the time. And I'm sure we have a lot of other examples.
Every Thursday night, I video FaceTime with my son who lives across the state. So I get to see my grandbabies.
Okay,
and they get to see me. And I think that's wonderful.
So you FaceTime with your
my
your son and
grandkids.
your grandkids.
Yes.
Which is amazing, being able to
Yeah.
keep in touch with people who live far away. Well, this particular
So you see 'em,
video
like
call
strangers.
app, it's called Duo. It's by Google. It goes on any platform. And the reason I included the photo here was so that you could see that my contact list, for those people I have a picture in the contact on my phone, their picture shows up. It's a really simple interface. You don't have to have literacy skills to be able to use Duo. You could just look at the photo of your mom, tap the photo of your mom, and you're in a video call. So that's huge. And this too, as a transition tool, can make somebody more independent. If they're at work, if they're at school, they can still call and touch base, let you know when you need to come and pick them up, or let you know when they're going to be home. It's all of this increases independence. And for somebody who is a signer and uses ASL, it's great that we have smartphones because now they can engage in telecommunication as well. Okay. We've got another question or comment.
Another app that I know of seems kind of counterintuitive at first. It's a video chat for individuals who are blind or who have extreme visual impairments. It's called Be My Eyes, where they have a volunteer who will look at the environment that person is in. And like, for example, what button am I pressing on my remote? So that the individual with the visual impairment will hold the remote up against the phone camera, say what button is play, and they have volunteers on the other end who guide them to which button is play. And it's communication across long distances, but it helps people with visual impairments go through daily life. Other examples, what's the expiration date on my milk? Mm-hmm. Is this the right cereal I'm buying in the grocery store? Like just daily living things like that would be nearly impossible to do without a Braille surface right there.
Right, and not everybody who's blind uses Braille. My colleague at Tech Owl, Julianne, she's blind, but her vision loss was cumulative over her lifespan. And she can read a little bit of Braille, but she's not a Braille user. She uses VoiceOver. She has her phone and her watch talk to her, and that's how she interfaces with her technology. She uses a similar technology, though. It's a pair of goggles or glasses called Ira, and Ira has a camera on it, on the glasses, and you interface with a live operator who can guide you through the airport, read the expiration date on your medicine, or any number of things. And more, especially around the holidays, a lot of businesses, like major stores, even Walgreens, I recall, will make IRA services free for people with vision impairment for periods of time, like Christmas or Hanukkah shopping and stuff like that. So these are all incredible tools. That one isn't directly smartphone based, but so you've got an option. You can do the IRA goggles, or you can use Be My Eyes and connect with a volunteer. There are also augmentative and alternative communication apps, and these are apps that are usually mostly iPad, some of them are iPhone based. And what a lot of people don't know is that these apps are not just for face-to-face communication. They can also send texts, send emails, post to social media, or even just take something you've written and stick it into the Notes app on the iPhone. So on Touch Chat, which is an app I know well, there's a speech bar at the top of the screen where you've crafted your message. It's where the message is written out. If you hold on that speech bar on the iPad, it's going to pop up a window that says, do you want to share this message? And then you can export that message. So AAC users can also do this, can also engage in distance communication and use that for work, for keeping in touch with family, or just out in the community. And then there's Apple Pay. Hello for people out there who have organizational impairments. Like myself, I'm horrible with my credit cards. If I have to take my credit card out every time from my wallet and then put it back, I'm in a hurry, I put it in the wrong spot, I shove it in the wrong pocket, it goes in between the pages of a book, I can't find it for a week and a half, I'm panicking, I'm ready to call my credit card company and tell them to cancel my card because somebody's gonna steal my ID and the world is gonna end, right? But I use Apple Pay. So all it takes once it's set up is a double click on my phone and then tap. And I've paid and I don't have to get my card out. You can do Apple Pay on your Apple Watch, and there are other versions of this in the Android world. There are other types of pay services. If you have an Apple Watch that has a cell plan, unlike mine only works in conjunction with my phone, but if you have your cell plan for your watch, you could leave your phone at home, go out into the community, order an Uber on the Uber app on your watch, go to the restaurant, pay with Apple Pay on your watch. Text your family to let them know what time you're going to get home, then order the Uber and go home, all with your watch, or your phone. So pretty darn cool. So I'm not yet using it on my watch, but I use it on my phone all the time. And for me, it just helps me feel more relaxed, less anxious, and more organized because I know where my stuff is, that I'm not getting it out and I'm not going to lose something. And more is coming, and I'm going to start going progressively quicker and quicker because I know that we've only got about 15 minutes left. Voice control is going to be increased substantially in iOS 13, and that's for the iPhone and iPad, but also in the OS for Mac. So you're going to be able to do more with your smartphone just by talking to it, and more with your computer as well. And also, like, we have a colleague at Tech Owl, and I keep forgetting, but he has color blindness. He sees the world basically in browns and grays and whites. And I always forget, and I'm like, Tom, does this color look good on me? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, my bad, I forgot. And so there are vision settings for somebody who has color blindness or other types of visual impairments, like the white glow of the screen or the visual movement of certain things in certain apps might cause you problems. Even if it's just a headache, it might be problematic. There are going to be new settings that allow you to remove some of that visual stimuli from your phone. So it's going to make it easier for people like my friend Tom to use. And I'm going to tell him, I talked about you today. And the camera. Let's not forget the camera on our phones, because we can take a picture of a business card. We can take a picture of where we parked our car at the mall. If we're out in the community on our own and we've got a worried parent, like me, checking in, saying, okay, when are you going to be home? I could ask my son, just take a picture to let me know where you are. Or if he's feeling lost and needed my help, he could take a picture. So there are lots of things that we can do to use our cameras to remind us. And you can always then stretch the image and magnify it. And I might have talked about it later, but there's even a magnifier built into the accessibility features on your Apple phone now. So if you go and enable that magnifier, no longer do you have to have like a clunky video magnifier separate device with you to go and read menus at the restaurant. You can just use your iPhone, and you can change the amount of magnification and the color contrast. So if I needed to read the menu in yellow on blue, or blue on yellow, or red on black, I could do that just by using what's built into my phone. Now, another thing for people, let's say if we're especially talking about somebody who is out in the community, who might have an intellectual disability and or also a developmental disability. Let's say end up lost. They end up having to interact with first responders. Their responses might not be predictable, or they might panic and not know what to say. You can use the screen on your phone for a message. So I have pictures of my cute dog. She's adorable, right? She survived Hurricane Maria on a beach by herself in Puerto Rico and then got rescued and came to the US. But I could do something much more important with my device. I could have a screen like this. My name is Jaquan and I use this iPad to talk. I have autism. I like to flap and I like to rock, and I might not behave in a way that you can predict, but if I'm lost or I need help, call this number. Okay, so we have a question. Comment. Questions, comments, all good.
People may also want to know about medical ID, which is part of the iOS system. It's through I think the Health app, and you can set it up to have all kinds of like medications and so on in there. So I use the home screen for myself and my son to have our own picture so people could see it's us and give us back our phone if we forget it, and have the opposite person's phone number on it if we lose the phone. But then all the medical kind of things or disability related we have within the medical ID.
Yeah, and so imagine if you do that, have that in your Health app, but then also have your home screen, your wallpaper, because they call it wallpaper, be a reminder, first responders, if I'm unresponsive, please check my Health app and find out my medical information. And I did have, my son doesn't use AAC, but I did have an incident where he was walking at night and it was dark out and he was just looking at the stars, and he was wearing a hoodie, and somebody called the cops on him. And this police car comes rolling over the playing fields at him, not with spinning lights, just with the headlights on. So he didn't know who it was, so he ran away. And then they stopped him, and one of the officers who stopped my son, he was about 18 at the time, had a son with autism and recognized who my son was. And that was a really scary, scary night. So this can be really important. Also, back to social media. We talked about this, so you can use it to advocate with companies or representatives, to talk with your people. And just keep in mind that whatever you share on the internet is out there kind of forever. And also keep in mind that if you're using your device for a lot of stuff, like it could be buying something on Amazon.com, don't do that on the Starbucks Wi-Fi, right? So there are always pros and cons, but sharing information benefits somebody, right? Or it can be used by somebody. So we just have to keep that in mind. Keeping stuff in the cloud. This is huge, especially if you have highly customized apps or software on your device. Let's say you use an AAC app and you've highly customized your app so that it has your personal vocabulary. It's set up the way you're familiar with. And believe me, it takes practice to use an AAC app, and it's kind of like learning how to type. After a while, you don't need to think about where your fingers are going, right? So that automaticity is really, really important. What if there's a hurricane? What if there's a house fire? What if your software is lost? Sure, you have to replace the device, but if you have kept your backups in the cloud, and again, you have to think about which cloud service am I using and how private is this? But that can be a really great way to make sure that you don't lose something. So for instance, if you have powered mobility and you have a power chair or a scooter, and that thing costs a lot of money and probably has warranty paperwork and ownership and insurance paperwork and all that kind of thing, use a cloud service and keep those documents someplace in the cloud. So if you have to leave your home and evacuate in an emergency, you still know where that paperwork is. And that's going to make it a lot easier to replace that device if you're in a situation. And emergencies do happen. They happen here in Pennsylvania. We're not immune just because we live in a semi-landlocked state, right? Now, getting on to what we're doing at TechOwl, which is just so exciting. I've got a brochure on the table over there that wireless pilot I told you about, where we did a lot of studying and proving to the state that this kind of technology was really important for people with disabilities, they finally gave us the approval. And our wireless expansion started July 1st. So if you're a person who has a disability that makes it difficult for you to engage in telecommunication, your individual income is about 200% of the poverty line or lower, and that's individual. So you could be a 6-year-old child in a wealthy family, but that child will be eligible. If you can supply the phone plan, and there are cheap phone plans out there. If you go to Comcast or you go to Walmart, there are places to get cheaper phone plans. We can provide the equipment, and that's going to include iPhones, some Samsung phones, iPads with a cellular plan, some other types of phones, like there's one called the Lucia, which was made in Sweden, and the Lucia phone is especially made for people with vision impairment. Or like the young man with cerebral palsy who made that private phone call for the first time, he was using something called Sesame Connect. So we have ways to individualize. It's not just we're handing an iPhone to each person. We're looking at individual needs. And if you think you know somebody who could benefit from that special phone program, come up and grab one of the flyers before you leave, because it's just started, we got funded, and we're just taking in those applications now. It's been like 2 weeks that we've been on the go with that, and it's very, very exciting. Other stuff that's out there. Okay, let me talk while the mic gets to you. Augmented reality. And I'm going to show you a little bit of a poster that I created and how augmented reality could support somebody in employment. Go ahead.
So how does that program work? Are you actually having people come in and do an assessment to determine which software and that sort of thing is put on the phone when they first get it? Can you have some feedback on that?
Depends a little bit on the, so how does it work? It depends a little bit on the type of disability and the type of needs that we're meeting. For most people, they apply, they prove their eligibility, and we're just going to hand them the phone. If it's somebody who, let's say, needs an AAC app for telecommunication, they might go through a slightly different process where it's called the exceptions process. Somebody needs that fancy Sesame software that can do face tracking or Bluetooth into your joystick. There's probably going to be a slightly separate process, but it is possible. So you contact our office, and the first thing you're going to do is send in proof of disability and proof of income, and probably sign a statement that you can pay for the phone plan. And then you can come in to us or to one of our regional AT centers, the ATRCs around the state, and get a demo of the equipment. So virtual reality, we think of it like I was playing in the exhibit hall. It was very quiet, and I was getting a little bored, and so I put Dinosaur AR on my phone, and I was taking pictures of my colleague Laura with like Stegosaurus and Triceratops on the desk with her. But AR can also be used to support people with disabilities. So HP Reveal, it's no longer a website, but my understanding is that the app is still out there and living on. You can take HP Reveal, log into this account, and point your phone at a picture of this question mark at your place of work, and it could open up something like a video of a social story saying, I might have questions at work. It's okay to have questions. I don't need to be anxious about having a question. If I have a question, first I can ask my coworker. If they don't know, I can go ask my boss. It is okay to ask questions. So it could be a social story, it could be instructions for making the coffee, or it could be a checklist of things that you have to accomplish at work that day. So HP Reveal, just right on the phone. I think it's also on the Android platform. Yeah, obviously, because I have a QR code up there for downloading it to Android. That can be really great. Now here's one that's a little more touchy. And I know we're out of time. If anybody needs to leave, please don't worry about it. I'm happy to stick around and answer questions. This app, Life 360, is a tracking app. And so you could keep track of where your son or daughter is or where your parent is. You can keep track of each other, know where they're located, not feel like you have to worry about somebody being out in the community and getting lost. But hey, huge privacy issue. So I think it really has to be done with the consent of all the people involved, or in the case where you really, 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 really have deep concerns about safety for the individual. So when I tried to download that to my iPhone and I went home and said, hey folks, let's try this out. I want to explore this AT. My whole family went, nope, see ya, not doing it. That was okay, but it's out there. GPS tracking is out there. Other stuff about TechAL, I'm just gonna sort of fly through this. We have a lot of resources. You can grab one of our brochures, go on our website, techalpa.org. Know about other resources here in the state of Pennsylvania. PATF funds assistive technology. They give low interest or no interest loans. They also do a lot of work with financial literacy and financial planning and exploring resources. Also Disability Rights PA, because we know that it's not a perfect world. Rights get violated. And sometimes we need somebody in our court who's going to help inform us of what our legal rights are, whether it be under educational platform like legislation or under ADA, know about those. And
Can I give the code real quick?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Have to go. For those of you who need a code, it is T as in Tom, B as in Baker, A as in after, 183. So TBA 183.
Okay, and last but not least, check out the website, but also if some of you would not mind going to the bit.ly up there, that's our training forum, and it kind of is a way for us to collect data on how we're doing and how this presentation went. So if some of you wouldn't mind going to that and filling that out, that would be a great help to us. Helps us prove to our federal funders that we're doing what we're supposed to do. And thank you so much for coming today. And please feel free to come up and ask questions if you have them. So, thank you.